So welcome back to my box truck, my constantly evolving project, and I'm just step by step sort of bringing you back to the past of this journey to get from just this metal box that I purchased to turn into a tiny home, and the steps that I've taken to turn it into a tiny home. So for this video, I'm going to be specifically talking about sort of the first steps into getting to the point of being able to insulate, and then finally getting these final walls and ceiling and everything done. You may notice this is a new thing. So I bought this for the cat, and like a proper child, he doesn't like it. Like, it seems like he was much happier just jumping from that one to that one. Where is he now? He is sleeping. And he does not like this thing. Which is supposed to be a cat hammock, so it's supposed to be kind of like a high bed for him, but he doesn't like it. Apparently he likes hard surfaces better, and what he'll do is he'll jump from here to the table and then up to the other one. So there you go. Kids, man, kids. But anyway, let's move on and talk about the subfloor. Now, I already put out a video about doing my roof vents and doing my subfloor. I'll try to remember to throw up a card for that or put a link in the description. But basically, that was a combined video. Those two events happened pretty close, if not the same day. I can't remember now. Like, it gets distant after a while. But I put in my roof vents and I did my subfloor. Now, for my subfloor, just to quickly summarize, the bottom of my box is not metal. I have an aluminum box, and the floor is wood. They are very thick. I don't know the size of what they are. Very thick wood planks. And no, I was not going to take them out. Number one, I was living in here, and that's a big job. And so I could not live in here long enough to do something like that. Number two, it's a pretty solid floor, and the wood is already like weather treated, and like there was nothing wrong with it. There was no reason to pull out that floor, but it was not pleasant to walk on, and the planks did have tiny little gaps between them. So I didn't know what I was going to put on top of it at first, and I knew I was going to do like a plywood. But I was like, dude, should I insulate underneath that plywood? Shouldn't I? And what I ended up doing, if you look at the video, is I put some underlayment down on top of that wood floor, and then I put plywood on top of it. Now, the problem was when I got to the last piece, which I had to cut around the doorway, I kind of effed up. I was in a rush. It had taken me all day just to get the first two pieces in, even though I was just cutting them short. And I needed to get this last piece in, and to get the last piece in, I had to cut around the pass-through, so that it kind of fell through the pass-through. And I rushed it because I knew I kind of pushed it being at the storage unit all day, which I did eventually get a little talking to about. And now, if I'm going to do a project at the storage unit, I try to keep it to a few hours and get out of there, which is also good because when I have to do a project, I also have to make sure Mickey is safe. If the weather is decent enough, I'll put him in a cab, and I also have a large cat enclosure that I can put him in outside, just so like I don't lose track of him if he gets startled or scared. But he hates it, and I hate having to do it to him, but it's the only way I could progress our home from a metal box to something that resembles more of like an actual home, which is getting closer and closer to every day. So don't really like putting him or me in that situation. And so really, really long days of working when I don't have anywhere to safely put him can be troublesome. But this was a much shorter situation, and I broke it up over a couple of days. So yeah, let's take a look at sort of fixing the subfloor and getting ready for installation.
So I decided to use peel and stick tiles on the door to the right and left of the cab, and I did that project the exact same day that I put in the subfloor. So there were two things I needed to fix: finishing up those peel and stick tiles, which I had to go back to the store for some more, and filling those gaps that were left after I put in the main part of the subfloor. But I ended up having to do another project because me and Mickey had a visitor on our roof.
All right, so I'm finally out here. I need to pull the ladder off the side, and I actually need to go on the roof first and do a little cleaning project. Basically, a bird got up there. I have a little bit of video of it, but a bird got out up there and pretty much pooped on the top of my roof vent, and me and Mickey heard him walking around up there. I think he was a pelican or a seagull. I don't know what those things are called. One of them is up there. Oops, nope. There he is. He's up there. Whatever that kind of bird is called. And like, he sounded pretty heavy. We were like, who the heck is on our roof? Like, Mickey just kept looking up, and I was trying to figure it out. And then we saw the feet on the top of the roof vent, and we figured it out. And then I watched it just poop all over my roof vent. So I'm gonna go up there and take care of that.
Side note on these ladder hooks on the side of my truck. First of all, you can tell that this was before I installed my third and final large window. Those ladder hooks did widen up the side of the truck quite a bit, and I ended up damaging a ladder while trying to take a turn around the cement corner of a building. And so since then, I have removed the ladder hooks, and I no longer have that ladder. So for anyone thinking about rather tall vehicles like my box truck, which is, I think actually with the roof vents, I've remeasured it, it's just under about 11 feet. So the box is a little bit over 10 feet high to the top, and that's not accounting for the space that the roof vents now take up, especially the front one when it's opened. Is cleaning solar panels is actually a chore you will have to do. In this case, it was motivated by the bird, but it's something you want to do anyway. Besides birds attacking your panels with their poop, they're just gonna get dirty. They're gonna work less efficient when they're dirty, and so it is a thing that you will need to be able to reach your panels in order to clean them. They're kind of not a one and done, set it up and abandon it type of thing. It's a thing that's going to take some maintenance to keep clean.
Well, that's done, and I just wiped my hands down with sanitizer, because ew, that bird had a pooping good time on the top of my freaking truck. The good thing is I did get to get up there and also just wipe all the dirt away from the solar panels, because they were also dirty, which should improve some of my, solar input. But I would have rather just been wiping dirt and not wiping dirt and bird poop. But now I get to use my cool little new tool area here and cut some wood and fix some things. And now that I've done that, I think I was just like about getting on the roof. Now that I've done that, I think I'm ready to really dive in.
Some days in a build are just fixes and adjustments and sorting out things you messed up previously. And this was one of those days. So it was also one of those days where it felt like you were just like paying for your past mistakes. You didn't really feel like you were progressing. But I had a few pieces of wood that I needed to cut besides the subfloor, and so I was going to take care of all of that as well. So let's take a second to talk about my pass-through door. It has this weird piece of wood that I think is supposed to be there to keep the door on track, but it actually was more annoying than helpful, and I kept taking it out so I could put the underlayment underneath of it and putting it back in. And then when I put the subfloor in, I took it out so that I could finish the subfloor and make sure that it was all even so that the door was sliding over sort of the even part of the floor, and it was still annoying. And as of today, I've taken it out completely and it hasn't made a difference. I made a cardboard template of the doorway, and using scraps of plywood from the plywood that I cut up, I began to create the places I needed to fill in my mistakes. In addition to fixing my mistakes on the plywood floor, I also wanted to build out the framing around my roof vents to match the roof ribs of the truck. And so I needed to cut a couple of pieces of wood to make that happen as well. Yeah, I used too much glue. Still can't get it out of that shirt. After fitting my subfloor pieces into their little cracks, which they all fit perfectly, by the way, I then proceeded to finish doing the tile wall and making that project complete. So after watching a lot of videos about mold and also having a couple of spills in the box truck, I decided I did want to paint the whole floor with Kills. But I also wanted the floor to be even, and yeah, okay, my cuts weren't that perfect. So I decided to paint and putty the cracks in the reverse order. I was going to putty the cracks and then paint, but let's just say that turned out to be a harder job than I thought. You see, because I was in the middle of a show and rehearsals and all of that insanity, it took about a week after I installed the final little pieces of the subfloor for me to actually have time to attack the puttying, because I needed to pull everything out so I could access the floor. And I thought I was going to paint that day as well. If I'd known I wasn't going to get to the painting, I wouldn't have unloaded everything, but because I had a goal, I unloaded the whole truck on the side of the road. In your head, things always go way faster than they do in reality. And the reality of putting the putty in the cracks, smoothing it out, sort of making the rough cuts between wood better and more flat, actually was way more involved than I thought. It's worth it now that I look back on it and think about it. But at the time, I just could not believe how long it took. And my stuff was just sitting out on the side of the road the whole time. So, of course, I wanted to get it back safe in the truck as opposed to being vulnerable on the street. But another job got done, and I decided the best thing to do was to load everything back up into the truck and call it a day.
So as you saw, just to finish up the subfloor, I still needed to take over the whole side of a street. And people ask me, like, how do you have the nerve to do that? And I had to really get to a place, because of my situation, where it was asked for forgiveness instead of permission. Sometimes you just got to do things and see if you can get away with it. And the worst that happens is you end up apologizing to somebody. Like with my storage unit, you know, I actually, there's a couple who owns it. It's like a privately owned franchise thing. Like there's a larger franchise, but they're like the owners and they live on site in an apartment over the office, and they know I'm building out a box truck. And so I went and had a conversation with them about the day that I was there too long. I you know, had a conversation. I apologized and said I would try not to take too much advantage in the future, you know, in that situation. And so that's sometimes just what I gotta do. Like do it and see what happens. And the worst case scenario, I'm some weirdo that a few people stare at while they're walking down the street, and otherwise I'm ignored. But at the end of the day, what I needed to get done got done. I've been the weird kid since I was a kid. Like I never quite fit in. I always kind of walked to the beat of my own drummer. I was never the cool kid. I never did cool stuff. I was a weirdo. So I guess, like, at a certain point, I'm like, I can't be thought of as any more weird than I've been thought of for most of my life. So why not just go ahead and do the thing? And so that's what I try to do. And like, you know, for the most part, it's gotten me to a point where I have something that resembles a tiny home, which is where I wanted to get. And sometimes that means like being willing to look a little embarrassing for the few hours, or catch a few stairs, rather that's working in a parking lot, or, you know, pulling all your stuff out on the side of the road and finishing up your subfloor project. Now, the scariest thing about the thing was all my stuff was on the side of the road, basically. And so, yeah, I was worried about thievery more than anything. I mean, I felt like I was relatively safe where I was, but yeah, I was worried about thievery because, like, when I'm in there working and into what I'm doing, like, I don't know what's happening on the street. Like, I could glance out the window every once in a while, but I couldn't really like do much. Like, even then I would have had to run my fat butt, you know, out of the truck and do a flying leap if somebody wanted to run off with something. And luckily I didn't lose anything. Like, I think people are so like weirded out by the situation. They're like, okay. But I made sure I never went back to that particular street and did it again. Another thing is, like, you don't want to overdo a situation. You want to make sure there's large gaps in between any situation that might be weird or might attract too much attention, because that's when you become the person that makes them worried that other people are going to try it. If it's this weird event that happened once, it's this weird event that happened once, and people kind of like maybe whisper about it, but it never really becomes a thing where they feel like they need to call enforcement. And that's not universally true. Sometimes, you know, like I said, you have to be willing to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. And if I hadn't taken those risks, I wouldn't be where I am today. Alright, see you in the next video.
Thank you for once again for joining me for another video. And this is where I remind you to do all those YouTuber things, like hit that subscribe button, hit that like, hit the dislike if you want. Just hit what you want. And there's a comment section if you have something you want to say about the video. I thank you guys for sticking around. I was going to jump right into insulation, and then I realized, oh yeah, there were all these little fixes in the middle I did, and I think it'd be important to mention them because they're not so much that things changed so much as I couldn't finish something and then I went back and fixed it, and now everything's fine. So it's okay for things not to go perfect. Thank you, as always, to my Patreon and YouTube membership supporters. And just so you know, Patreon and YouTube memberships have the most current updates of what the BoxTruck looks like. It's not an official tour, but they have seen the most current changes to the BoxTruck. And so if you want to join in on that, you can get on Patreon, I think for like $1 a month. I say I think like I didn't set the number. You can get it on Patreon for like $1 a month. And the lowest tier on YouTube is a little bit higher, but that's honestly because most of everything comes through Patreon, as far as that secondary support. So if you want to join in, $1 a month, they get the most current updates. Like when I change something in the BoxTruck, they see it within a day. If you're interested in that, that's available. If you're not, it's totally cool. It'll all be on YouTube eventually, and watching videos matters. What makes a YouTuber a YouTuber? Am I a YouTuber? I feel weird calling myself a YouTuber. Like, I do YouTube. All right, I'm not going to go off on this. I'll see you next time.